Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Red Doctor Projections. I'm Lucas, and unfortunately Eric can't make it today, but he'll be back tomorrow, and we'll be doing our final California prediction tomorrow. But today, I'll be taking a look at our prediction for the 2021 Boston Mayoral Election. It's been pretty tight these past few days, and since it's coming up so soon, this will be our final prediction. So, with that being said, let's get right into it. Unlike last time, I'll be making both a prediction on the preliminary election and also the final election as well. Last time I only did a prelim election, and guess what? My prediction is changing for that. So I'm going to skip over the background because we discussed that last time. But I do believe that from what we have so far, Michelle will probably be making the general election. I'm pretty certain that she will make the general election, given the polling data plus Michelle Wu's popularity. I was also listening to a very interesting podcast discussing how these counselors that represent more of the at-large districts do have a great advantage over those who only have a certain district, because the past year with COVID-19 has been very hard to campaign that strongly. Whereas if you were a Boston City councilor at large, compared to a councilor from a specific district, you're representing all of Boston. So all of Boston will probably get to know you, while someone like Andrea Campbell, who isn't a councilor at large, she only represents a district, she doesn't have that high amount of name recognition from across the city than what she would have if she was an at-large councilor like Michelle Wu, like Anissa Saibi-George. But that also brings in the question of Kim Janey. Kim Janey is currently the acting mayor, since she did become mayor after Marty Walsh was confirmed as the Secretary of Labor. She was, I would say, promoted to that position because she was the president of the city council. But quite frankly, even though the majority of Bostonians do approve of Kim Janey's handling of the COVID pandemic and her job as mayor, I think that a lot of them think there can be a candidate that can do better than her, which is why we're seeing her, kind of like trudge along in the polling instead of, not really taking a huge lead. She should have an incumbency advantage, but I think a lot of the controversial things she said about, for example, mask mandates, comparing it to slavery and birtherism, I think that has kind of angered the progressive base a little bit, which has been more so aligning with Michelle Wu, as I think many do view her as the most progressive candidate running. I think she's supported by Elizabeth Warren. That is why I do believe Michelle Wu will advance. And that is also why I'm now predicting that Anissa Saibi-George will also advance instead of Kim Janey, which I think I predicted before. I think with the moderate support going behind her, Anissa Saibi-George, who is probably the most moderate candidate in this race, she will probably have enough support to make it to that final round. Because remember that she's also probably going to have some Republicans voting for her as well, even though in Boston they are a very small number, but she should be able to garner at least some of that vote and enough to make it to the final election. And in addition to that, I want to add that with the new polling data, we got a lot of new polls since the last time I made this video, and it seems to be that many of them do show a dead heat between Campbell, Saibi-George, and Janey. This one was a internal done, so I don't really trust that a lot since it was done by Campbell. But the other ones do show a Saibi-George leading, having in second place, with obviously Michelle Wu is in the first place ahead of her. So that is why I am predicting that Saibi-George will end up making it to the general election against Michelle Wu. So in this case, what is my prediction there? So I first want to take a look at their platforms just for a little more background. So, Michelle Wu, Anissa Saibi-George, regarding police, for example, she doesn't go as far as saying, defund the police or that kind of stuff that we saw from like a Maya Wiley type campaign in New York City. Some of the policy from Michelle Wu, she's, going to likely campaign as a very strong progressive, such as her proposal of a Green New Deal in Boston. So this is going to be a classic battle between a more moderate candidate versus a more progressive candidate with Michelle Wu. I think Michelle Wu will continue to press left, and Acai George will continue to try to appeal to that moderate base. So we're going to take a look now at the election results from the city council elections in 2019. Michelle Wu, very, very popular counselor. She won she won a large part of the vote in this election. She won both in the preliminary round. She won it by a decent amount, and also won the general election votes by also a decent amount. And more specifically, we can take a look at the head-to-head between her and Anissa Acai George, provided by, I believe this was by Jesse Hahn. He makes great maps. You can go follow him on Twitter. But he made this map of comparing Wu's performance against Acai George's in 2019. As you can see, Michelle Wu can do very well in in some of the precincts that Acai George can't really do that well in. For example, in Chinatown, I believe, plus 44.1% here. Very large Asian American population, obviously, and I think they will end up backing Michelle Wu in this race. She will become the first Asian American mayor of Boston should she win this election. And looking at this data here, it looks like Michelle Wu can do better than Acai George in many of the precincts, not just in Chinatown, but she can really get that vote out behind her, like especially the Asian American vote behind her, and also potentially a lot of the African American vote or the progressive vote behind her, which would prove to be beneficial in a general election. And as a result, that's why I am predicting that Michelle Wu would defeat Acai George in this type of election. Obviously, I would give an update in a future video when we determine who exactly makes it to that final round. But for now, the prediction is a Michelle Wu victory. And with that being said, that's the end of the video for today. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this episode, please hit like one. If you like our content, please subscribe. And we'll see you in our next episode tomorrow. See ya.